All right, so today we're going to deep dive into Gen Z in the workplace.
All right.
So we're talking about those born, what is it, 1997?
Yep. 1997 to 2012.
2012. Okay, so these folks are
Yeah.
they're going to be about a third of the workforce pretty soon here.
Huge part.
So
Yeah.
this is not just like some, fun fact. This is like how to make sure that your company is
Right.
successful,
Exactly.
right?
So
You got to understand them.
yeah, and the articles that we have here, we've got a whole stack of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really focus on how do you engage with these folks because,
Right.
we've got potentially 5 generations in the workplace at one time.
At one time.
That's crazy to think about.
It's wild. And if we don't figure this out,
Yeah.
we're going to see lower engagement and higher turnover.
Right, right.
So we got to get it right.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So what really is at the heart of how Gen Z thinks?
I think it starts with communication, growing up as digital natives, like fully digital natives.
Right. Really shapes how they communicate. So that means a lot of visual platforms, rapid fire information,
Right. Yeah.
interactive content, like that's their norm.
Okay.
Um, and then, on top of that, authenticity and like genuine communication is like so key for them.
Oh, interesting.
They'd rather get like straight to the point. They want the authentic, like real deal.
So no corporate jargon.
No corporate jargon. They can smell that a mile away.
Okay.
But, while they might be digital first,
Right.
don't underestimate the importance of face-to-face connection.
Yeah.
They still need that to build relationships and like really understand things deeply.
That's kind of like a balance then.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And another thing that keeps coming up, when you look at Gen Z is this idea of work-life balance.
Oh, yeah. It's a huge one for them.
Yeah.
They really want to have a life outside of work.
Right.
And so they prioritize flexibility.
Okay.
So that could look like remote work hybrid schedules,
Yeah.
having control over their hours.
Gotcha.
And mental well-being,
Yeah.
that's huge for them.
Mm-hmm.
They really look for employers that support that, whether that's, wellness days or just a culture that values mental health.
And do they actually see that happening in the workplace? Like, are they seeing people that have that good work-life balance?
I think they admire those who figure that out,
Okay.
who can have like, a fulfilling career and a fulfilling life outside of work.
Yeah. That balance is hard.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
So how about this then? Like this idea of feeling included, feeling valued.
Oh, that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
They need to feel heard and respected.
Okay.
And they want workplaces where they can like share their thoughts and opinions without fear.
Right.
They don't want to be shut down.
Gotcha.
And authenticity from their employers is also huge,
Okay.
especially when it comes to social responsibility, like walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
And, aligning with their values and like what they care about.
So DEI, that's a big one.
Oh, yeah. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not just some like trendy thing to them.
Right.
Like it actually influences their job choices.
Interesting. Okay, so now let's talk about this perception. I guess it's out there that Gen Z might not have like the greatest work ethic.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And honestly, I think that's a huge misconception.
Okay.
They're all about efficiency. Like they want to get things done.
Right.
And, they might not see the value in just putting in long hours just to like look busy.
Yeah.
But they're definitely not afraid of hard work.
Mm.
They just want to make sure it's meaningful and like actually gets results.
So their loyalty to a company, it sounds like that's not just a given.
No, it's definitely not a given.
Okay.
They're looking for value and experience.
Yeah.
And if they're not getting that,
Yeah.
they're not afraid to move on.
Okay. And how do they feel about like innovation and, seeing things change?
Oh, they're all about it. They crave that.
Okay.
They're impatient for progress and like new ideas.
Got it. All right. So career progression, how do they see that?
For them, it's often more about personal growth and making a real impact.
Like they want to see the results of their work. They want to feel like they're contributing.
Yeah.
And so, the traditional corporate ladder, that might not be their top priority.
So not so much into middle management.
Yeah, not so much into middle management, especially if it feels like just, bureaucracy and hoops to jump through.
Interesting.
And they also really value leaders who are experts in their field,
Okay.
who are collaborative and approachable. They want clear explanations, and they really appreciate empathy and honesty.
So how much do you think their upbringing, like, growing up during the pandemic and all that, how much has that affected them?
Oh, I think it's had a huge influence. They've had to adapt and be resilient in the face of like so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's also made them really pragmatic and realistic, I think.
Okay.
And they're definitely socially aware. They care about making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And I think they're also very value driven and financially savvy.
Interesting. Okay, so if you're trying to train this generation, develop them, what works? All right, well, first of all, forget the long, boring lectures. Make
Okay.
it visual, make it interactive, and for goodness sake, keep it short and sweet.
So short attention spans?
Kind of.
Okay.
They're just used to consuming information in like quick digestible chunks.
Right.
So think, short videos, infographics, hands-on experiences, things like that.
Gotcha.
Um, and they're also really into self-paced learning and, collaborating online.
Okay.
But make sure there's feedback involved.
They need that guidance. So what about technology? Should we be using VR or using AI? I mean, how are we incorporating all that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, technology has to be seamlessly integrated.
Okay.
It's got to be modern, efficient, user-friendly.
Yeah.
They're not going to put up with clunky, outdated systems.
Mm,
And yeah, things like VR and gamification, those can be really effective.
interesting.
And then, on top of all that, you got to emphasize personalized learning paths, mentorship, clear opportunities for advancement.
All right. So big career aspirations. What do they want?
Well, a lot of them are really driven by purpose.
Right.
They want to feel like their work matters, like they're making a positive impact.
Yeah.
They're also really into continuous skill development. They want to keep learning and growing.
Right.
And they expect clear paths for growth. And often they expect it to happen relatively quickly.
Oh, okay.
And then you also see this strong entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay.
They want to be their own boss. They
Yeah.
want to have autonomy and flexibility. And that might mean, starting side hustles.
So how do they view time management and productivity?
They're all about efficiency and getting results.
Okay.
They want to leverage technology to streamline things. And, if they see a better way to do something,
Yeah.
they're not afraid to challenge traditional approaches.
Interesting.
And they also really value work-life boundaries.
Yeah.
They're not into that always-on culture.
Okay.
And they expect to be recognized and rewarded for their hard work.
So if they're not feeling valued, what happens?
You might see some quiet quitting. They're not going to necessarily like storm out or anything, but
Right.
they might just disengage and start looking for something better.
So how do we build commitment and loyalty with these folks?
I think it comes down to a few key things, aligning with their values,
Okay.
giving them real opportunities for growth and a healthy work-life balance.
Right.
And then on top of that, you got to have a strong, inclusive culture, transparent communication,
Right.
regular feedback recognition. Like those things are essential.
Gotcha. And it sounds like their background, being digital natives, all of that really affects what they expect in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely. Growing up with social media, navigating economic recessions,
Yeah.
experiencing a global pandemic, like all of that has shaped how they see the world
Right.
and what they expect from their employers.
And they also seem really passionate about social responsibility and ethical practices.
Yeah, that's a big one for them.
So what are some of the biggest challenges managers face when it comes to working with Gen Z?
I think one of the biggest hurdles is overcoming misunderstandings and stereotypes.
Yeah.
There are these assumptions about their tech skills or their work ethic or their communication style.
Right.
And that can create a real disconnect.
Okay.
So to bridge that gap, you need open communication, empathy, flexibility, and, sometimes even reverse mentoring.
Reverse mentoring.
Yeah, where Gen Z employees can actually share their expertise with more senior staff.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned the attention span thing earlier.
Right.
That can be a challenge. So you've got to
Wow.
find ways to keep things engaging and concise.
So like bite-sized learning.
Exactly. Microlearning, visual aids, storytelling humor, like all of that can help.
Okay, so creating an inclusive and diverse environment, that's got to be important.
Oh, it's not just important. It's a fundamental expectation.
Right.
They want to see real action. They want to see authenticity
Yeah.
when it comes to DEI.
Right.
And they expect companies to be committed to social responsibility and ethical conduct.
So a strong sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's crucial for them to really thrive.
Okay, so final question. How do we build those lasting relationships with Gen Z employees?
I think trust is at the heart of it all.
Okay.
Being transparent, honest, having integrity, that goes a long way.
Yeah.
And they also really value mentorship and opportunities for continuous learning.
Right.
So create those opportunities for them. And then when it comes to feedback,
Yeah.
make it regular, make it clear, make it constructive. And don't forget to recognize their contributions.
So it sounds like we need to be more like mentors.
Yeah, kind of like a guide on the side, you know?
Yeah.
Set clear expectations, but give them the autonomy to figure things out.
All right, so it's clear that if we want a successful workforce, we really got to understand Gen Z.
We got to get it right.
So for everyone listening, think about how you're currently managing maybe what needs to change
Yeah.
to better connect with this generation.
What can you tweak?
And maybe just take one small step today to better understand their perspective.
Yeah, that's a great place to start.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Of course.
See ya.
See ya.